cursed be the ground for our sake. Both thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for us. For out of the ground we were taken for the dust that we are, and to the dust we shall return. The From the Dust podcast features people who have had life-changing experiences. Here they share their stories and testimonials about how God can move and change a person's life. Welcome to the From the Dust podcast. Take a listen. Open your hearts and ears. Here's your host, James Science.
Hello, and welcome to From the Dust podcast. I am your host, James Science, and whatever you are, whatever you do, I hope you are highly favored and highly blessed. Well, today we have a guest, and she has a very, very powerful testimony, and I don't want to give too much away, so we're going to bring her in. Kim, how you doing?
I am good, despite being home since March 17th. But other than that, I'm good.
This COVID thing, hopefully it's over soon. Hopefully we get out and do things like normally,
Seriously, it's been a God shot though. It really has. I can't go out, I can't connect, so I found other ways to connect, like podcasts.
Right. Oh, that's where this came from. I was used to going out and being around the church body, being around
Yep.
had to do something. So this what came out of it.
Come on.
A gift. So you have quite a story, and you have quite a testimony, and you've done a lot. You've been through a lot. So let's get to the start. Where'd you grow up?
You know what? I grew up as a child in Burbank, and in my junior high school years, I grew up in Sun Valley. And so I was raised in a pretty good home. My family, on the outside, it looked great. We did things together every year. We went on trips together, but it looked like a bunch of strangers going on vacation because we never connected. There was really no bonding in our family. And two different lifestyles. My mom, she wanted a career and went to school. My dad wanted to party. He was like the Cheech and Chong type dad, loved he totally Cheech and Chong. He got a table from outside, lacquered it, put bezels in it. That was our table in our living room. And my mom was totally different, and she wasn't happy, and we felt it. And she told us since the day, as far back as I can remember, when you guys turn 18, I'm leaving. And so we lived with that, knowing that she would leave one day. And that caused a lot of insecurity within myself, a lot of resentment, a lot of fear, a lot of different things growing up in my household. But like I said, on the outside, it would look like a great home. You would think we were a middle-class family, we're in an okay neighborhood, but there was no connection in our family. And later on, I found out why. And even the thing that you're reading, I said my perception was my mom didn't love me. And the reason why I said perception is because that's what it looked like to me. And I found later on that I was so wrong. And that perception fueled my addiction and fueled my anger and resentment. So, yeah.
What were some of when you say addiction, what were some of the things that you had went through with it?
Oh my gosh. It's funny, just probably about 3 weeks ago, I'm like you, I like to connect. I have to get out there. I gotta somehow, I like talking to people. And so I'm on Facebook a lot, and an old friend of mine, I haven't talked to in 30 years. And he messaged me and he says, I remember the day that you got saved in detail. And I didn't remember him, so I would never comment on his Facebook, out of respect. So I didn't know who he was. Was he a fling? What was he? Was he somebody in recovery, or, so out of respect, I didn't comment. So that sparked my interest, and he told me stories in detail of my life growing up. And we came from we didn't come from the gang member side. We were the partier side, the party crews. Dancing on the speaker, fly girls, and a lot of cocaine, a lot of acid, a lot of marijuana, a lot of drinking. Later on in high school, I started using PCP. But what I found is I was just looking for the biggest drug to knock me out. And whatever knocked me out the longest, that's what I would take because I had so much inner pain and turmoil that I didn't know how to deal with. And so I would use whatever it was out there, whatever came to me. Thank God heroin never came to me. Otherwise I would have used that too. So that was my addiction. But not only that, addicted to people. I was addicted. If I could have snorted my husband, I would have. I was addicted to him, different types, codependency, wanting to be liked, wanting to belong, looking for love in all the wrong places. I became really promiscuous at 12 years old, out in the streets. I was a runaway. And it sounds cute that I met my husband when I was 12 years old. We've been together 31 years. Wow. But what the heck would lead a 12-year-old to go looking for a relationship? There was a lot of pain, and two broken cookies just make crumbs. And that's what we were two broken cookies, and we gravitated to each other. And it was not a good mix. At that time. And but it filled a void, kind of. So yeah, those are the drugs that we did that part. And he came out of the gang lifestyle, total different, other side of the tracks. He was involved in gangs, and I was involved in the party scene, and we came together. And 12 years old, out there on the streets, run away. I would hitchhike and go out there.
I remember my first girlfriend at 12. It didn't end good, but
Do you have a daughter?
I have 4 kids. I have 2 boys and 2 girls. Yeah, my oldest daughter, my son, he's gonna be 15 in June. But my oldest daughter, she's my biggest fan. She's my critic. She's my guard. When she says, "Hey, this is not good for you, Dad," or I don't, because me and her mom, we split up. We're divorced. Things happen. But yeah, she don't know nobody in my life. She's very hard, protective. And then when that happens, she's real Dad, you got to be careful, Dad. So yeah, but she's my heart though. So it's I tell people to get to me, you got to get through her, and that's the bottom line.
That's right. You are her biggest hero, and she will marry somebody just like you. And thank God you're serving God. My dad wasn't. He had a good heart, and he hated my husband. It's so funny. He was just like him. Party scene, same thing, just different, different era. But my dad was a lot like him, and I was daddy's little girl, and I wanted to be with somebody just like my dad. And and that's why I was the way I was. I wasn't getting that at home. I wasn't getting that attention. That my dad was a very hard worker, but he wasn't. He would never hug you and say, "I'm proud of you. I love you." And so I looked for it outwardly. Out there in the world.
Those are the things that I do with my kids. I grew up a pastor's kid, and my dad, he was always busy with his ministry, so there wasn't always a good relationship. But what I want to do with my kids is I make sure I tell them that I love them. I make sure because I don't want them thinking that I don't. I want them knowing that I do. And they my daughter, she's my biggest fan. When I'm recording and she's around, she's asleep now, but she'll sit in the corner of the room, quiet, hunkering down, and she'll just watch, and
wow.
She knows the intro word for word, and I'm glad that I'm able to be a light to them with this right now.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
What were I like to hear people's stories, and there are some of their darkest days, and what brought them out of that. What were some of your hardest days?
My darkest days were when the high wasn't working anymore. I never wanted to come home. I wanted to stay high long enough, and everybody else wanted to go home, and I wanted to stay out there because when I came home, the depression, I was uncomfortable in my own skin, insecurity, low self-esteem, self-worth would just sneak back in. And so I would try to stay high, and it wasn't working anymore. So that was my lowest. But I would say right teeter-tottering between me giving my life to the Lord. I had my husband in 10th grade, we had broken up, because I was a cheater. I was always cheating. He was cheating and, getting high. And we broke up in 10th grade, and I was still running amok. And he called me one day and he said, "Hey, I gave my life to the Lord. I want you to come to church." And I didn't know what that meant, and I didn't care. I just wanted to go to church because he was there. And so he took me to this little building, and it was a prayer meeting. And but when I walked in there, you cannot deny I've never felt anything. I was raised Catholic. I knew there was a God. There was something always hungering for something deeper and greater. I knew there was something missing in my life, but I didn't know, nobody showed me that way. And so when I went there, man, it just hit me. And it was a prayer meeting, and they asked me if I wanted to get saved, and I said yes. I didn't know what that meant. And they led me in the sinner's prayer, and then they asked me if I wanted to be spirit-filled, and I said yes. I didn't know what that meant, and all of a sudden I got spirit-filled, started speaking in another language, and God got a hold of me. But they didn't teach me mentoring, discipleship, changing from the inside out. So that lasted about a couple of years, but inside, you know, I was still wretched. I was still getting high, but I was getting high less. I was still sleeping with my boyfriend, but sleeping less. But but outwardly, I was going to church, lifting up my hands, preaching the gospel. But inside, nothing. God hadn't gotten a hold, and it wasn't until my deepest, darkest moment was we were still playing that game, me and my husband at that time, because I ended up getting pregnant. We got back together, and I was 18 years old, and it was, I told him I was pregnant, and I said, what do we do? And he goes, I guess we get married. That's the way he proposed. So we got married, and on our wedding day, our best idea, I was 3 months pregnant, mind you. On my wedding day, I was 3 months pregnant, and our best idea was to collect all the money after the wedding that everybody gave us and to go to a cheap motel in Long Beach, score a bunch of drugs, and get high. Doesn't everybody do that? That was our honeymoon. And so we went and we put he set up the lines for us, the coke, but something was from 14 years old to 18, God was beginning to move in my life. So there was a conviction something was different. I couldn't deny that thing that happened to me years ago, but I didn't know what it was yet. And so I can feel like I didn't want to do this, but I didn't know how to stop. Again, codependency, trying to make everybody else happy. And he got high, he set up the lines. I was still in my wedding dress, mind you, and I was wearing my veil. And I going to church, got married in church, and I snorted those lines in the bathroom. And when I looked up, I saw myself for the first time. I had never looked in the mirror before that. And I heard the Holy Spirit speak to my heart and say, what are you still doing? What are you doing here? And I felt the ugliness, the dirtiness, everything in my life had just flashed before me. Everything, the darkness, everything that I did, people I had hurt, I slept with, all these things, pregnant, and here I am hurting a baby. And that day, I got on my knees and I just said, God, come into my life. You know, if you're real, take away this desire from inside, change me from the inside out. That was the first time I ever prayed that. And I came out of the bathroom and my face, I don't know, must have been glowing because my husband looked at me and he goes, what happened to you? And I said, you know what? This will be the last time I get high. And he looked at me and he laughed and he's like, are you sure? And I said, yeah. And he goes, well, move out of the way. So he wanted to do his lines because he didn't believe me. And so I was watching him do the lines and still the craving and desire was still there. And so I said, okay, well, let me finish what we have, go for the last hurrah. And tomorrow I'll get clean and sober. And so that day, April 19th, 1986 was our wedding day, was my last high. April 20th, 1986, I got clean and sober, complete abstinence for the first time. And that's when God began to do a work in my life. That's when the sanctification took place. I'd already been saved, but that sanctification of getting clean from the inside, changing what's up here and what's in here, yeah. God began to change that in my life. And I started working on those areas, those mommy issues, my resentments, my hurts, abandonment, you know, all those different feelings that I had growing up as a child that I carried into my Christian life. And I see a lot of Christians are the same way, so spiritual but no earthly good. You know, they have all the Christianese down, but inside the wretched sinner that I am, not surrendering that. So I think that was my darkest, one of my darkest, but that was my darkest before I gave my life to the Lord.
Yeah, so sometimes we have to, as believers, we still got to hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
Realize that, you know, God's serious. I shared this on my last episode, but I pretty much had the same experience. I knew God, I knew the Word, and I knew right from wrong, and I was in between of going to a church, but still using. And yeah, one day just maybe I had too much, but when I looked into the mirror, the look in my eyes was solid black, and then I didn't recognize I didn't know who I was anymore. I didn't see James. It was a totally different person, and what I believe found it was a not a possession, but it was a demon
Oppression.
of oppression, but demon. It was a demon of an what I wouldn't admit, which I can now, was actually turning into an addiction of cocaine.
Mhm.
And then I just that day God said that's it, and the next day I walked into the church I go to now, and just like you felt the presence of God, I knew I was home. I knew
That's
I was
right.
there, and then I never been the same since. And I've been doing ministry there. I've been doing this ministry, and I've been in a good place since. Only through the grace of God.
Oh, believe me, I know. I know. So that was one of the darkest moments. My second darkest moments was when my son passed away. My third son was born in 1993. And my husband, even though I committed my life to the Lord, he continued in his addiction. So he went from using what we were using to heroin and crack. And he ended up in and out of mental hospitals. He was talking to himself. He was taking 16 psychotropic medications to calm him down. They put him on the West Wing because he was so out. And I would tell the doctor, maybe if he'd stop using crack, that might help. They kept on giving him diagnosis after diagnosis, but it's because he knew the truth and he was playing so many games. And the Bible says a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways.
Yep.
And he was constantly in and out during that time. And I eventually had two kids, and then my third son was born, Joshua David, in 1993. He was born, and 3 months into his birth, he was only 3 months old. And my husband was in a men's home. He was always in and out of men's homes, always falling here and there and getting back on track. And I was going to get his Social Security, and that drive there, I remember a friend went with me. I only remember her saying is turn here, turn left, and I was just turning here, turning there. I didn't know where I was going. And all of a sudden something hit me, and when I came to, I ended up on someone's lawn, and I had a big gash on the side of my head. And it turned out that my car had flipped and landed on a fire hydrant, and it broke. And my oldest son was in the back, and my youngest was in the front, my newborn. And he got the full impact because it hit me from the right side. So when I came to, I looked down, and there was glass all over him. And he was breathing real heavy. So I can tell that he wasn't breathing. And I found out later that it was internal bleeding. And the lady that hit me was a drunk driver. She was a DUI driver. She wasn't supposed to be driving. And, she didn't set out to kill my son. She set out to drive. She just thought she was okay. She just wanted to get home. And she made a bad, deadly mistake. She wasn't a bad person, but a bad choice. And so anyway, my son, he ended up passing away, and they asked if we wanted to donate his heart. We were able to donate his heart to a little girl in the hospital. And so I felt like he was born 3 months to give that little girl life. And he fulfilled his purpose. And then afterwards, me and my husband went to court for the lady because they were going to get her with vehicular manslaughter. And we begged the judge for mercy. And we asked the judge to let her come out to be with her kids. So the judge allowed her to do her jail time on the weekends. Wow. He gave her vehicular manslaughter. She did her jail time on the weekends. I think the only reason, because God was already doing a work in my life, but my husband was an addict too. So both of us had this empathetic compassion of addiction, good people making bad choices. And because God had delivered me from so much, I think because of that mentality prepared me to have compassion for this lady. I was pregnant, still getting high, the same thing. So that was the next darkest moment.
You were able to forgive her? Were you able to talk to her at all?
No, I wasn't. I have her papers. I have her name, and I've been trying to find her on Facebook, and I look up her name just to let her know I've never held anything and that I forgive her. And all these things that happened to me is why I later on became a drug and alcohol counselor, because of my heart, my compassion that nobody is hopeless. I watched my husband, he struggled for 14 years or 19 years of his addiction in our marriage. So 31 years, mind you, 19 years of that was addiction. And I watched this guy that people threw out of the church would say he's worthless, give up on him, leave this guy. This guy will never amount to anything. He'll always be sick. He'll always be crazy. And I watched God redeem this man. And he was my biggest teacher, watching him. And he never missed a day of church. He went to church every Sunday. Even slam back loaded. He'd get high in the bathroom, probably slam in the bathroom, smoke crack around the church. But he never missed. And it gave me a heart for all those that are lost. I don't care how you come to church. Just get there. Come as you are. Let God do the rest. So.
Because I understand God did not only in your life, but in his life too. What came out of that? What were you two able to do?
Well, it took a long road. Like I said, 19 years. Because of my codependency of wanting to make excuses, always trying to be his savior. Captain Save-A-Ho and Bro. I was always trying to save people. And when I stepped aside, I started realizing I wasn't saving. I was making things worse. And after 19 years, I told him, either you get help or I have to leave. That was the first time. And I didn't do it with yelling, putting him down, demasculating him. I just, with a loving heart, said, I'm done. I love you enough to let you go. I can't do this anymore because it was affecting the kids. And after that, he ended up realizing I was serious. And he went to a men's home for like the 20th time and came back. And he had only been there 3 months and came back. And he said he had a spiritual awakening. Things were different this time. And my resentment and insecurity, I said, yeah, right. You're going to go back. My kids didn't believe him. Here goes dad again. But that was the last time. And our pastor asked us if we would start Celebrate Recovery. And I said, yeah, I'll do it because he needs the help. Again, always blaming him. And so we started Celebrate Recovery, which is a Christ-centered 12-step for hurts, habits, and hangups. And I realized that I had issues. It wasn't just him. I could hide behind him. It was easy to blame him. He was the addict. But I realized that I had hid behind him because I had issues. I had mommy issues, resentment issues. I had spending issues. I would blame him for, we didn't have any money. It was easy to blame him, but when he got clean and sober, I couldn't blame him anymore. And so, so we became a drug, we did that. You want me to go on where we went from there?
Yeah, that's what I want to get at. You were living the life of drugs and sin and all that, but a bigger picture and a bigger light came out of your life. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, because of like I said, God doesn't waste a hurt. I wouldn't have the compassion I have if it wasn't watching my husband and what he went through and his love for God and fighting that fight and trying to get up. So, we started off at Celebrate Recovery, and that's all we thought that was our dream. We're just Celebrate Recovery for life. We loved working with the addicts, those that nobody wanted, those that were kicked out of church. We'd bring them to us. We'd take them in. And eventually, our pastor ended up moving on, and he said that he wanted Julio to go to school to be a pastor. So he started going to school. He mentored him to go to school, and then a new pastor came on, and it turned out that he couldn't take our church because he had another church that was bigger, a church on the way. I can't think of Nueva Merced. Is that what it's called? But he's at Church on the Way. He's been doing that church over there. And so he needed someone to take over this church. And he says, you guys already have the respect of the people. You've been here for years. They've watched transformation. So we became the pastors of that church. So we became the same church that he smoked crack in and slammed dope in the bathroom. We became the pastors of that church. And God just began to use us. And I became a drug and alcohol counselor. after that, working, I became a supervisor of my program during that time. And then there was another dark moment. Did you want me to talk about that one?
Whatever you God puts in your heart,
Okay.
you need to
So
share.
we became pastors for 5 years, and I thought that was the Lord's last order. I said, God, we were already thinking of going off on our own and pastoring. We wanted to do that. That was our goal. We wanted to travel. We loved traveling. God had restored our family, restored our relationship with our kids. My husband thought sleep was a waste of time. And so every day, every moment we spent with our kids, because redeeming the time that they had missed growing up with his addiction. And in 2017, in July of 2017, he had shoulder surgery from all the damage of him falling, overdosing. Forgot he overdosed in 1999, was in a coma for 6 days. That was another dark moment. But after that, he had that shoulder surgery, and he was home for a while, and probably home about a couple of months, maybe a month and a half. And I was still running the church, so I went to church, and he said, just go to church it was a Wednesday service. Went to church. I talked to him on the phone. He said, I'm going to take a shower. And so I got home from church, and I came home, and I asked the kids, where's your dad? And he said, he's in the shower. And I said, how long has he been there? And he said, oh, I don't know. And they didn't know how long. And so he said he'd been in there probably 30 minutes. So I just waited. I sat on the bed, and I was eating, and it'd been about 45 minutes before I noticed the water sounded different. You can tell when someone's under it, and you can tell when someone's not, and the water's just going down. And I just quickened, because a lot of things happen, and he's overdosed in the bathroom so many times. So I get that quickening in my spirit when he's in the bathroom too long because of all the trauma through the years. And I yelled for my son, and I said, break open the door, I started screaming for him, and my son, he just kicked open the door, and we pushed the curtain aside, and he was face down in the water. And we pulled him out. He was probably there about 45 minutes. He was there a long time because his face had swelled up. His lips were purple. I've given him mouth to mouth many times with his overdoses and, being in a coma, but this was different. And when I was giving him mouth to mouth, when I was giving him mouth to mouth and pumping his stomach, water was just coming out of his mouth. And so we knew that he was gone, that he was gone. And so the autopsy, they said that if the water wouldn't have been there, because he had a heart attack, and he must have went to the side when he had a heart attack, and he couldn't push himself up because of the shoulder surgery, that he stayed in the water, and it just kept on going up, and he ended up drowning. They said if the water wasn't there, he probably would have survived. And so he died. He passed away in 2017. So that was another dark moment after 31 years of marriage. But I am grateful because we had nothing unspoken, nothing unsaid. We talked about everything. We even talked about if he ever died, if I dated again, or if I ever did. We talked about everything. He was my road dog since 12 years old. We grew up together. So this time he didn't die a dope fiend, a lousy father, lousy husband. He died a man of integrity, faith, and honor. And over 1,000 people showed up at his memorial of every different walks of life, from the police officer to the youth to the young adult, just so many people's lives. He had no idea how many people he touched. They saw his transformation, and it gave them hope that they too can change. So after he died, I ended up, the day he died, I actually quit my job as a drug and alcohol counselor. I needed to quickly go into recovery myself because it was so devastating of what I saw, and healing. And I believe in restoration and healing. And I stayed home for 6 months. And then I got a job at Pitch's Detention Center working with inmates. And I've been doing that ever since. And I'm a court advocate liaison. I go to court and I ask the judge for leniency for those that are facing state time to get them into a drug program. And I go to bat for those ones that are really serious about getting help. And it's all due to my husband. It's because of him. And so when I help them, I'm helping him.
Wow. what a legacy and what a story from being through so much and coming up triumphant, doing things for God. I know how our relationship with the spouse is. I don't share this much for the people who know me. If me and my ex, if if you didn't know we weren't together more, when the way we interact with each other, you wouldn't know. You know what I mean? Um, just like you said, it's weird because she's actually like my best friend. You know, I can go
Yeah.
to her for anything, and it's weird because the way we have it planned out, it's not a joke, but it was a joke, but it's serious at the same time. That when I pass, I'm gonna be cremated because
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with her. You know, and we're not. I mean, we're divorced, but which is weird. What came out of that is that the relationship is much more stronger. You know, and
Yeah. And
I
that's the way it should be, that you still have that love if you separate, but you can still have that respect. And it took a long road for me to realize that. And my husband said that the only Jesus he ever saw was in my life, and that's what changed him because I stopped belittling him, demasculating him, putting him down, and I just started loving the person. And I would pray, God, let me see this man through your eyes because, man, everything on the outside, forget it. And I think that's what brought us so close together as friends. We respected each other.
yeah, that's
But
it goes a long way, and I'm grateful for the relationship I have now. I wouldn't have it. I wouldn't have it any other way. You know, it's made me a better person. That's for sure. It's taught me a lot, and it's taught me how to respect people more, and it's taught me, taught me just be a better man.
yeah,
Yeah, if I ask this with anybody that comes on, if for the people that are listening and the one I believe that needs to hear that will hear it, I feel with every message there's gonna be someone out there that's gonna hear it. Whether they're saved, whether they're lost, or whether they're in between. What can you leave them? What kind of hope or what kind of word can you minister to? Even if it's a woman or it's a man that needs to hear this, what can
yeah.
you give to them?
I would say this, that whether you're the person that the black sheep that everybody says you're hopeless, God doesn't make junk. And I would say, don't give up. One thing I've prayed all my life is when I gave my life to Lord, Lord, reveal to me what holds me bound. And God would show me areas in my life and not to give up hope and not to think, well, I'm always going to be this way. Take off that jacket. You're not always going to be this way. We serve a God that will deliver you, set you free. And if you're the mother or the wife that's praying for the one that's lost, don't give up hope for them. Don't think, well, you don't know what I'm dealing with. Believe me, I've seen it all, and I've seen literal transformation take place. If God can change somebody like me and my mindset from dancing on the speaker and being promiscuous, my mom, I was every parent's nightmare for a teenage daughter. And if he can change my life, he can change your life. Nobody's hopeless.
Amen, amen. I want to thank you for sharing with us here. I want to thank you for sharing your. It's when I read it, I had to double read it because it was I couldn't imagine anybody or myself going through what you do, and from going through that and what you've done, I admire that.
Yeah, thank you. Grace of God. Without him, I'm broken and feeble. Only
Yeah,
because of him.
you know, and I continue. I read you through Mario, and I appreciate you coming on. This
Oh,
is
thank you.
I
Thank
believe
you for having me.
it was the best, and I believe this is gonna reach the right people.
Amen. God
We'll
bless you.
we'll call it an episode, and yeah, God bless, and I continue prayer and blessings upon your life.
Yes, come on. I'll be praying for this.
Oh yeah. Oh,
And
God bless, and you have a good night.
you too.
We'll see.